first thing to say is hello and welcome to, once again, the IoT Security Foundation's Annual Conference. In fact, this is a special edition because we've buddied up with our colleagues at TechWorks AI to bring the agenda to you today. For those of you who've been with us before, welcome back. We're delighted to see you once again. For those of you who is it the first time or maybe have travelled in from places far and wide, of which we already know just looking at the analysis of the attendees, we know we have attendees across Europe, we have people flying in from the US, and I think, Matt, if you're in the audience, give me a shout. He's coming from Australia. Matt, are you here? Hey, there he is. Well done, Matt. So welcome, special welcome. Now, there's a lot of information that I'm going to try and get through in a fairly short space of time. So I've made extensive use of QR codes, and I'm going to say two things about that. One, for those of you who I talk to regularly about security, QR codes, I know. But I think the risk is small and to an acceptable level. And the second thing is, please have your phones ready, because there just may be something I say that is of interest to you, and you want to capture it before we move on. But before I jump into the key themes, this is a Photoshop version of me. Before I jump into the key themes, I just want to set some context, because this is slightly different, as I say. We stand here today with TechWorks AI, but there's a bigger story to what this is all about. The IoT Security Foundation's legal entity, what's behind us, is an entity called TechWorks. The same with TechWorks AI. Many of you will know that I'm the Managing Director of the IoT Security Foundation. What you may not know is that I'm also the COO of TechWorks. TechWorks was established in 1996, not as TechWorks, but originally as the National Microelectronics Institute. We changed our name in 2017, really to reflect the changing nature of industry here in the UK and internationally. So that means next year, our parent is going to be 30 years old. I started some years ago. I thought I would be here for a couple of years to help this industry association achieve bigger and better things. And that was 21 years ago. So I've been here for almost as long as the furniture, probably longer in some cases. But let me just run through them real quick, running from my right, your left. ASIN is in the domain of automotive electronic systems innovation. Again, because we see the nature of the industry changing, what you can expect next year, we're already having discussions with those members to how do we expand the scope beyond automotive. And two areas that we're thinking is a very natural extension will be aerospace and defense. My colleague Gunny Dajala will be up on stage later today representing cross-domain cybersecurity. So he'll be here. If you haven't met Gunny, I encourage you to say hello to him. The next network, DESN, or to give it its proper sounding name, is design. Now, where design operates is in semiconductor device, chip, and embedded systems, as you'd expect, design and innovation. Then we have IoTSF, and I hope you know that we were established 10 years ago with a mission to make it safe to connect, because we saw lots of insecurity in IoT, and our story continues to unfold. Then we have NMI, as I already mentioned, the original body which we grew from. Now, NMI was set up in the semiconductor manufacturing space here in the UK, and I'm delighted to say we still have very successful fabs, although you may not see them in your day-to-day. They are alive and well, and we're very proud to have NMI as our heritage. And of course, the new kid on the block, which is TechWorks AI. And as I say, today we bring two of, actually, I forgot the key point. The key point here is that we are connected communities. We've all sprung from the font of semiconductor and systems, also known as electronic systems in old money. And today, we're bringing two of these communities together. So this is the 11th Annual IoT Security Foundation Conference, but it is the very first TechWorks AI Annual Conference. Very first, because earlier this year, we officially launched TechWorks AI after about a year or so of prepping the ground through various projects and gatherings. My colleague is here, Gareth Richards, who's the network manager. And he did the launch at Bletchley Park in February. I'm going to have to read off some notes here, which Gareth has kindly provided for me, so I don't screw it up too much. But in Gareth's words, the TechWorks AI community is for any organisation involved or interested in the latest developments in AI and machine learning, whether technology, application standards or policy. Applications alone have a vast reach, from robotics to medicine, life sciences to factory automation, and we welcome broad participation. Our special interest groups, our working groups, blogs, webinars, newsletter and events such as this aim to engage our membership and spark ideas for collaboration. So for those of you who are interested, please take a closer look, speak to Gareth today, visit the TechWorks AI website, or if you're brave enough, scan the QR code. So, as time is limited, this is a very quant update, selected highlights really of what we've been doing at IoTSF this past year, from the evolving to the new. So I'm going to start with the evolving, and I think many of you will know that one of the main outputs of the IoT Security Foundation is our security assurance framework, a very popular download. Last time I checked, it was over 20,000 downloads. That continues to evolve. Now, whilst it's possible still to download the PDF of the framework, we've changed the format and the way we publish in anticipation for extending its functionality. We very much see it as a tool to not only demonstrate conformance to standards, but also compliance to regulation. So we also believe that the new format will hold utility in the purchasing process, and we're exploring ideas of actually how we do that. But in simple terms, what we've done is we've published all of the 300 plus requirements that are in the framework into their own web page, which means we can uniquely reference them, again, looking forward to how we might utilize it in different ways. We also launched the Device Identity Forum earlier this year. This was driven by members because we recognise device identities as an essential ingredient across supply chains and across the operating life of devices and systems. So there's a group there which is bedding in. You can hear more about the Device Identity Forum and the framework later in the session after lunch. And I've given the session leads 10 minutes to give us a rapid-fire update on what's been going on. And, of course, that accompanies the work that we've been doing with trustable, I should say, AI bill of materials. And I apologise for that trusted piece. We started out trustworthy, and then we said trustworthy is not right, let's make it trusted. And then we went, trusted is not quite right, it's actually trustable. And I think that just kind of illustrates in one very simple example how nuanced security can be. But the final highlight for this is we've just recently introduced the notion of special interest groups, and that may raise an eyebrow for some of you, but you know the mainstay of what we've been really working on is working groups and our chapters. The difference with special interest groups is that we've really reduced the overhead of starting these up and letting members engage with one another. So they are expected not to do necessarily events. They're not expected to produce publications or best practices, but the essential thing is just providing a forum where members can gather to discuss the subjects that they want. And the first one that we are looking at, we just have had a couple of meetings already, is in the energy sector. And already I can tell you the discussions are really quite vibrant, looking at the scope of what that means, and even the question that's asked for, what do we think cyber resilience looks like in the energy sector? And of course, more will follow next year. Those of you who have been before know that I like to play with this. I have a slide that says, it's a thing. It's where I drop little seeds. It's where I maybe put some provocative comments in. It's where I really want to draw your attention to some of the things that I think are interesting or important or just absurd, quite frankly. So let's start with it's a thing, and we'll look at technology first and foremost. Memory safety. We've talked about this for a number of years. The UK's DSBD programme officially came to an end earlier this year, but I'm delighted to say that more funding has been opened up to further develop the community, and I think most importantly, chips, the delivery of chips, because we can't do CHERI without chips. So we've peppered the agenda with a few talks on the CHERI technology. Of course, we are technology neutral, so we're not just about CHERI. We think the important thing is to address the challenge of memory safety. So if you're more interested in programming languages, then obviously Rust is the protagonist. Other memory-safe programming languages are available, but it's something that we'll continue to promote and raise awareness of until we've really kind of nailed that challenge or addressed it to satisfaction. And then, of course, we have existing technology. So, for example, memory tagging, and I think our keynote speaker will tell us a bit more about memory tagging. That technology exists already. But something else that really caught my eye was just in September when Apple announced, and I'm going to read from my notes specifically here, that they announced in September with the launch of the iPhone 17 that they have a complete vision for memory safety. I mean, that's how important it really is. And they've got a complete vision across all their devices. And they heralded in memory integrity enforcement as the most significant upgrade to memory safety in the history of consumer operating systems. That's quite a bold claim, I think. Of course, quantum continues to be a thing, not just in the component technology, so quality, random number generators, key distribution, obviously future cryptography, but also in the computing, and especially where we're interested, some of those aspects of being quantum resilient, bringing the constraints of IoT into play. But what I would say is, even in the planning for the conference, there were sort of familiar sounding phrases that have started to be used in recognition that it's here and now. So quantum by design is already being talked about. Now then, this year, the biggest story really has been, or dominated much of what we've been doing, is regulation. Even more so than last year. Last year here in the UK, the Product Security and Telecoms Infrastructure Act was enacted in April. And of course, we publish a market surveillance report each year looking at the use of vulnerability disclosure, which is really for us a barometer of what's going on in the world. And we've been doing that for a number of years. I'm delighted to tell you that we'll be publishing the 8th in the series next month. As always, it's an interesting read. I've read the draft and we're making some tweaks and changes to it at the moment. But I can tell you it will have fascinating insights for you. If you're interested in that report, and I hope you are, and you're not on our newsletter, please join our newsletter and we'll let you know when it's ready. As always, I'd just like to commend the wonderful team at Copperhorse for judiciously producing the Time Series report, which gives us a year-on-year plot of the trajectory of what's going on, certainly with vulnerability disclosure policy. But then there's the elephant in the room, of course. The big news is the European Radio Equipment Directive and the Cyber Resilience Act. Now, much has been said and will continue to be said about the CRA, including today. We have sessions on that. I think it's clear to see, and I think it's maybe stating the bleeding obvious, but it's causing a great deal of concern. And of course, being involved in the whole PSTI, product security part, at least regulatory development, I think it's fair to say that we are going to see untold, I think, unintended consequences as a result of the Act. In fact, I hear associates around the world telling me that there are companies outside the EU wondering whether they really want to participate in you because they are really worried about the liability and the support costs. So, it's the thing. The first, I'm going to say a couple of things that may not have been picked up, but I hope have been, and we'll hopefully have more discussion about it today. But one of the first things that I picked up was, yes, vulnerability. Reporting's in it, vulnerability reporting, great, that's fine. I moved past that. But I kind of stopped, and I went back, because looking at the requirements of the CRA, it goes beyond promoting the basic hygiene practice of vulnerability disclosure, something, as I've just mentioned, we've been promoting for many years. The CRA goes beyond that requirement, the traditional aspects, and firms are obligated to report via the CRA's single reporting platform, which means you have to notify the national CCERT and ANISA within some fairly tightly defined timelines. So it's no longer simply an exchange between researcher, between manufacturer and customers. You have to report that to the authorities. Now, whilst I personally applaud anything that improves cybersecurity, this feels a little over bureaucratic to me. It feels like there's overreach, and whilst I can understand it in the sense of national infrastructure, I think in commercial markets, that doesn't fit too well. So if you've got an opinion on that, come and tell me. Come and change my mind, but I think that feels a little bit heavy-handed. The second point to promote is continuous compliance. Now, the reason why it caught my eye is because we've been talking about continuous assurance for quite some time, but they've changed it to continuous compliance. And again, that made me stop and think. My concern about continuous compliance is it really misses the point. I gave a talk just last week where I set out to convince the audience that adopting a security mindset and best practice is far superior than having a compliance mindset and complying with regulation. The danger with a compliance mindset are manifold, not least of which is it loses sight of the goal. And whilst it may tick a legal box, I don't think it necessarily leads to better security. In fact, I could argue, I could put a good case together why it will lead to worse security. So I'm standing firm. Continuous assurance is where it's at. Continuous compliance, it's triggering me. What can I say? So I'm standing firm. But that brings me to my next point. Automation is a thing, and it stands to reason that if we are really to seize the opportunity, the scale and scope of IoT, then we've got to look at automating at scale too. And this means that certainly in the security domain, we've got to look at new schema and ways of doing things. And we've been exploring the utility of software bills of material for some time, SBOMs. Stating some of the things we've been saying all along again. SBOMs are not simply an ingredients list. They have utility in just that regard, but they can be operationalized. They can help us automate and maintain security in the wild. Whilst we firmly acknowledge that they're not perfect and they're not a complete and sufficient solution, there are some things that we're looking at that's coming down the line and we just can't think how else we might do it. So we think they're really important. So the paper that I've identified here, which is a paper from CSER, was published earlier this year on a shared vision of SBOMs for cybersecurity. And we noted 17 international organizations from 15 countries. 4 out of the 5 eyes are noted on that paper. Conspicuous by its absence is any reference to UK. So needless to say, we are having interesting conversations with our own technical authority here and trying to encourage them to be a little bit more positive. They're not negative, by the way. I should make that point clear. But we would like to see it feature a little bit more prominently. And so my final point here is looking at what we might do in the future. for the first 10 years of our existence, we've really focused on the producer side of the equation. How do we build secure? Again, some of you have heard me talk about why we need more BS in IoT cybersecurity, and the BS is build secure, buy secure, and be secure. So we focused very much on the build secure. We're turning our attention now, and I've noticed it as being a flavour of the board meetings that we have, is we're turning our focus over to the market side, the commercial realities of things. And so buy secure is something that we think we'll be talking about a lot more in 2026. And again, I've already mentioned how we're starting to conjure ideas about how we might use the framework to do that. So here's a really, really important point of my talk every year, where I pause to say, we could not do, I know it's a cliche, but we absolutely could not do what we're doing today without the support of these good people on the slide. Again, I thank Sakama, as you can see from their logo, cybersecurity experts. Jen is with us today, and I think, Julian, I've convinced her to jump up on the stage later with you. That's a major coup, by the way. ARM, thank you to ARM for helping us get it across the line. You know, we are a not-for-profit organisation. This is quite an expensive part of our budget, and ARM helped us get it over the line, so I thank ARM for doing that. Of course, Device Authority. Darren, you'll see Darren in a bit, but Darren has been a serial supporter of this event and participates in the Executive Steering Board. And of course, our friends at Siemens, thank you very much. And of course, all our other exhibitors and session sponsors, thank you so much. I commend them to you. We have a small but perfectly formed exhibition. I hope you go and speak to the good people who are exhibiting here today. Thank you.